Well, the miners' strike started when the union were looking for better terms and conditions and better pay, weren't being listened to, negotiations failed, and they decided to go out on strike.
We started in March 1984, and the Yorkshire miners had balloted for a strike if they wanted improved conditions. And then it just got where the miners was disgruntled because they wanted the rights to work and work for a decent wage.
A lot of people thought it was political. They wanted to shut a lot of pits, 20 I believe. It was used an excuse that it weren't economical and they weren't making any money and things like that.
I think a lot of pressure was put on to the unions to try and comply with government. And we all know the famous Arthur Scargill, the leader. He actually, rather than negotiate, actually created the situation where we went on strike.
So the miners went on strike, I think never expecting that it would last as long as it did.
We didn't think we'd be out a year, that's true.
The biggest change was finances. It was a constant struggle to put food on the table.
What it was is the dole would not give you any money if you was on strike. They said, no, you can't have any, because it's your own fault.
In my family, there were 4 out of 6 of us worked at pit in one way or another, so we all relied on it a lot for us living. So it had a massive effect.
Well, there was no wages for any miner, no wages at all. And I had 5 young children. So it was a case of whether we laid down and died or whether we fought for what we believed in.
Into 6-7 months of strike, nobody's got any money. If you've got your savings, it doesn't last forever, does it?
And there was still what bit of money we had in, we had to keep paying his mortgage. Else we'd have had house took off us, like a lot of them. They all had their houses repossessed.
You know, I do remember sitting in a bank and asking for an overdraft just to cover a period of, you know, a few bills coming in, and where's the money going to come from to pay them? And I remember this he wasn't a bank manager, but a bank employee saying, well, why didn't you tell them you owe them the money? Why are you coming to me for money? It was frightening, because what you wanted to do was keep a little bit of control in your life, and you wanted this one person to help you out. But there was this overwhelming pressure all the time to just find money.
But it did cause an awful lot of problems because it divided families. And certainly in the village that I live in, there are still some parts of families that still don't talk to each other because they didn't support the strike or they went back to work, you know, too soon.
I don't think they could cope anymore. Things were happening, like people were getting their houses took off them and they got no money, they got nobody to rely on. Well, I assumed they were being offered good incentives to cross that picket line.
Well, we were on strike, so we expected everybody to be on strike with us, because at the end of the day, whatever we got or whatever we won, they were going to be in with us, weren't they?
I mean, the only thing after I felt sorry about was a chap who worked with my husband, and my husband was a real good friend, and he went back to work, and Alan never spoke to him again. And I feel really sad about that, because they were such a lovely couple.
It weren't just miners that were on strike, it were families. It were families that were on strike and families that were supporting each other. Because
they were fighting for the same cause, they were fighting for their family. And if their partners, husbands didn't have jobs, then they couldn't live.
It affected us. No wages coming in, no support from our husbands. Why should we stay at home?
So I thought, well, I'm either with him or against him. So I thought, well, if I'm with him, I may as well be actively with him.
We were better equipped at begging than our husbands were. You can't see my husband and 3 of his mates going knocking on everybody's door, excuse me, we're miners and we need some money, you know what I mean? They saw me tell to go away.
If it hadn't been for the women, the miners, I don't think would have gone back to work a lot earlier than what they did. I think at first they were a bit wary.
You know, we were talking about 30 years ago where the role of the woman was to stay at home and look after the children. The men were the main breadwinners.
You'll always get some men that think that their woman's place is at the kitchen sink, you know, and looking after the children. So that was a barrier that we had to cross.
You know, it weren't a case of that you're welcomed with open arms by all men in that strike. You had to fight sometimes to be able to organise in that strike and make men realise that you were serious and that what you've got to say was just as important.
I mean, we actually picketed our NUM branch to get into a meeting because we were trying to do things and they were sort of trying to keep us on the outskirts of it. So we set our own picket line up outside before they went into their meeting, and they let us get in and speak. When they realised that all we were wanting to do was support them, then they voted to allow us to do it.
And the men realised that without women in that strike, they wouldn't have gone on as long as what they did.
By the end of the strike, you know, we were marching side by side with them. We marched with them when they went back to work. And I think they fully appreciated why we wanted to do what we did.
I think they were quite proud of the wives and what they could achieve, and realised that actually they were strong. They weren't just little sit-at-home, cook my tea and pack my snap women.
All the children in the village went to Rotherham Borough Council, and they all got a parka or a pair of shoes. They could have one or the other. All the children were dressed in the same coats.
Because one of the things that the parish council did was to set up a boot and shoe fund, and the shop Bradley's down on their Worksop Road, they would supply shoes. Some people were too proud to do that and didn't want to anyway, because they felt ashamed because it was too near the in the local community, and people would find out. But that wasn't what was about. It was trying to help them.
We had a lot of support from trade unions, like Steelworks in Sheffield, and they'd adopted, I think it were about 3 or 4 pits, and they used to send their collections to them.
I can remember going down to London with the women's group, and we met with some railway workers and their families, and they'd all been collecting and, you know, getting stuff for us to bring back.
Railway men came up from different branches of ASLEF. They used to come up regularly. They'd collected money within branch and they'd bring that for us. They'd go out and they'd buy sacks of potatoes from local shops and take them into food kitchen.
I went down to soup kitchen, found out that they were starting a soup kitchen at local working men's club, so I went along to see what I could do.
They were set up to feed miners who were picketing, but in a lot of cases it were feeding families as well.
Bear in mind, some of them wasn't getting a penny in the house, or family allowance, or whatever you call it now. That's all they were getting.
But we are very keen to make sure that people know it's not a soup kitchen, it was a food distribution situation. So there was a lot of women had to come out and organise fundraising, they had to organise shops to donate, they had to go door to door, they had to make sure they kept lists so that every family that needed support would get support.
1,000 bags used to go out a week, you know, to feed the families. So that's an enormous task that they took on.
So we used to go up in the morning and set it all up, and we got a chef with us who were on strike, and his friend.
We used to have a lot of food donated. Some of it come from abroad as well, from Russian miners and stuff like that. And then we used to take it and try and be creative with meals.
I mean, we're talking about 1984, when people didn't really use things like lentils very much, and pasta were quite a strange food to a lot of people, and rice as well. So we used to sort of incorporate that into a lot of his stews and his meals.
But I know a lot of women went there. They used to peel potatoes. Whoever that wanted doing, they cook it and serve it and everything. There must have been miracle workers, because there was always a meal, something substantial on table for miners.
If you've got food and you've got food inside your system, then you can carry on another day. You don't get fed, you're then going to go and say, like if you have, well, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to go back to work. There's no way I want to go back to work, but I am starving and I need to support my families. Therefore, that's when other miners rallied round and fed these people. And this is how it was for us all. If one went down, we all went down.
If anybody wanted to know anything, that's where they'd meet. The meal was served between like 12 and 1 every day, and the union men would go in there to get messages out, or picket line to get messages out. People would come in to donate stuff. Some people would just come in to have a chat and just to discuss and spread, not gossip, but what happening, what they did and things like that. So that brought people together a lot.
We just lived and breathed that strike, and we needed to spread the word about why we were on strike.
Believe it or not, there was a lot of good things. People rallied round.
Well, you just felt as though you were part of something. You weren't fighting alone.
Everybody helped each other. Yeah. You always got the odd one like that were on his own, but mainly everybody helped each other.
And everybody were focused on the same thing, to keep the livelihoods, to keep the homes, to keep the community going. You know, nobody's going back to work, they're not shutting our pit.
It made people stronger, I think, all being out together.
It's only recently a young lady said to me, she says she remembers, she lived on our street, she was only a child at the time, and she says, I always remember everybody being in your house. Mainly that was because we might have a fire on that day, so somebody else didn't, so everybody would gather in one person's house so that they'd got the fire on, everybody was warm, but you didn't all have to have a fire on at the same time.
Even coal, where do you get your next fire from? Because we'd all got coal central heating and things like that, and you burnt anything. Coal, shoes, wood.
You got out wood and you did saw logs. And that's what you did. Even I went down, we sawn some logs up, and you could see people in the woods doing exactly the same because you had to keep warm.
It were fun at times, and it were fun how people were getting to picket lines where they weren't supposed to be. Our people were hiding them in the cars and getting them to places. And some stories that they used to come in and tell us about how far they'd been chased.
Well, my husband was approached to see whether we'd put some journalists up. We did this a few times actually. We just, kept them, just fed them and gave them a bed for the night. And during the day they'd go off on the picket lines and soup kitchens, and they just wanted to see what was actually happening. They wanted to be there. Germans, Belgians, they came over. One lady I got quite friendly with, Maria. We had a good time actually. But when they went home after 3 days, when I went in the bedroom, they'd left £70 up there, which was a lovely surprise because obviously money was very, very scarce, but it was lovely.
There's been a lot of talk about the support the gays and lesbians gave to the striking miners from London. They actually collected money to buy food for us. And, a weekly event for me was queuing up to have a carrier bag full of food. We didn't know what we were getting from one week to the next. Sometimes we'd be lucky and have a little tin of stewed steak, or you'd have some butter, some vegetables. But you didn't know what you were getting, but you felt as though you could queue with other people in the same situation, and it was just a bit of you had to make light of it, and have a bit of a joke about it as well.
And we used to all go out at night and play frisbee and rounders and just have a laugh, because you had to do something.
They were a community spirit, because if one person hadn't got something and somebody else had got it, they fetched it you, or they'd find somebody that had got what you were after.
You'd go to your neighbour and say, I haven't got any washing up liquid, can I borrow any? Yeah, have you got any soap powder? And we'd share, you'd share with your neighbour.
If your next door neighbour was ill, it wasn't a case that their husband stayed at home and looked after them. It was the case that your next door neighbour looked after you, so that there was a wage coming in. That was the community spirit that we had, and we were rock solid. My husband worked at Tilbury at the time, and he got stopped once going this roadblock by a policeman who said, "Where are you going? Are you a minor?" No, he said, "I'm not a minor." And this young constable apparently was quite stroppy with him then, said, "Oh, pull your handbrake on your car." Because the policeman had asked him for his ID, and what he'd said was, "No, ID went out after the Second World War." Then the sergeant came up and said to the, "Oh, what's going off like?" And my husband said, "Oh, he's asking for my ID." Well, that went out after the First World War, or the Second World War. Look at his hands, he's not a minor. He says, "Carry on, sir."
But that was the sort of thing, you did get pulled up wherever you were going. I mean, the fact that we're fairly close to the border with Nottinghamshire, you could be going to Doncaster on the back road and you'd cross over into Nottinghamshire, so you could get stopped just on your way to Doncaster, you know. People got stopped, my father-in-law got stopped taking his disabled granddaughter to Clumber Park. They wouldn't let him past. And he quite obviously got a severely disabled child in the car. So it was silly at times.
When I worked in school kitchen, the secretary came. She says, "Could you come down to my office? There's 3 gentlemen that look like policemen." I says, "What for?" I says, "I've done nothing wrong." So they were asking me, where was my husband in bed in the morning when I got up? I says, "Yeah." I says, "He's been there every day." They said, "Well, we come to arrest you." I says, "Well, I'm not going anywhere." So he says, "Can you sign these forms saying that my husband was on picket line and he wasn't in house, he'd been out doing damage to people's cars, houses and you name it." I said, "Well, he hasn't." I says, "He is to help to try and get the miners back to work." So there was on and on, got these papers, pushing them round the table. I says, "I'm not signing anything. I'm signing my husband's life away. I miss myself." Well, they were doing it to nearly all, trying to get it all out at women because the men wouldn't put up with it. They said women were weak. I told them straight. I says, "I'm not signing it," and solicitors come and dealt with it.
Yes, a small group of people will stand at the gate of the pit that where men are going into work and ask them politely, hopefully, that they don't go into work, and explain to them what the strike is all about, and hope that they can persuade them to turn round and join the strike.
Some of the women on the picket lines were extremely vocal, which didn't always go down well. The language was often quite choice. So yes, I think that, some got carried away.
Some of the pickets were getting quite large, so the police would be involved to make sure that there was no trouble. That was the reasoning behind it. It didn't quite work like that. Quite often the police were the ones that caused the trouble. That's another story.
The political message was the miners were out of control. They weren't behaving in the way they should behave. They were stopping other men going to work. And I think women knew that if they stood in the picket line, there would be less violence. There would be less violence between the police and the picket line, because women can sometimes push a bit more and not get away with it, but the reaction is a bit different, The legacy is one of no work, or no valid work. And when I say valid, I mean work that gives good pay and laughingly good conditions of work, because there was strong unions supporting the employment rights of the workforce. Mining communities, the mine and the social club and the welfare hall and things like that were the hub of a community. So here, when you lose that infrastructure, you need something else.
I think the fact that people are not working anymore has made a big difference to all mining communities, and it's a sad shame because they were good communities to live in.
Now, what have we got? Nothing. There's nothing down there. Nothing. It's just, I mean, how long is it since strike? This community still hasn't come back. And that is what we were striking for, the right to work.
I can't think of anything in my life that's changed this area as much as that strike did. You know, and for lots of young people just don't see that and would not understand that.
I think it's part of our history, and I think history should be preserved so that people are fully aware. You know, the younger generations don't forget that this was a mining village. One of my granddaughters actually came home from school on one occasion when she was in her teenage years, and a young teacher had told the class that the strike started because of Japan. I'm not really sure why Japan had anything to do with it, but we then had to get everything out, go through it all with her. But what was worrying about it was that history had been rewritten for a full class of students. Makes you wonder how much of history is really true these days.
A lot of women came out of the miners' strike changed forever.
I was 20 years old, I was single, I still lived at home with my family. So to me it was something new, and it was quite exciting because it just went away from everything that I knew.
I knew that my role, it wasn't to be a mother and wife anymore. I knew I had to go back into the workplace and earn some money.
Well, I didn't work before the strike, so but my friend lent me a cleaning job, which I hated, but I did it. It got me a bit extra a week.
But what I saw when my mum get stronger, she had to, because if she didn't do it, then it weren't happening for us.
I have lived on my own for a number of years, so that the ability to earn a wage and support myself has really saved me, because I could support a home and I could support my children.
I used to go around with a tin and ask for donations for the strike, which I never thought I'd be able to do, but I did.
It also built my confidence up as well, because I'd not been a very sort of confident person before that.
They gained a voice. You know, they could say the piece and fight for it and be convincing.
It's made me a very strong person, and I will fight for what's right for my village and my community. I think it's something through that strike that's bred into me, and I won't let go.
It definitely became a political person.
I became very interested in what were happening politically.
Well, certainly for me it politicised me. It made me think that, you know, I want to join the Labour Party. I want to be part of a political party that supports the working man.
And I mean politics about ordinary people, not about politics in Parliament.
And I don't think any group of women ever since have been as politicised or changed by anything. The miners' strike changed so many lives.
But after the strike, I actually got made redundant and went to university and got a degree. And it did actually help me during the course of my working career after that, which I've just retired from.
I think that was quite a good thing that came out of it, that women sort of started educating themselves and finding out about what was going on in the world.
But certainly lots of women went on and greatly improved their lives, and it was an incredible thing to see. They did things that I'm almost certain that if the miners' strike hadn't taken place, they would not have done the things that they did.
When I was going round Maltby and I was knocking on everybody's door from here to Wickersley, were never insulted. In fact, half the time they wanted to feed me, give me a cup of tea and give me a lift home. You know what I mean? But then you got to make more friends out of the village. They didn't understand, because they'd got their life somewhere else, like Rotherham or Brickyard or whatever. They did not understand what the miners and the miners' wives were doing. But with talking to them, begging from them, right, they got to understand. You know, and this is how it all came about, and this is how the miners stayed as strong as they did. And that was the support of their wives.
because as penniless as what we were, lad, we were as proud as our husbands were.
We are women, we are strong, we are fighting for our lives, side by side with our men who were the nation's minds, united by the struggle, united by the past, and it's here we go, for the women of the working class. We don't need government approval for everything we do. We don't need their permission to have a point of view. Don't need anyone to tell us what to think or say. We're strong enough and wisdom for our own, to go our own way. We are women, we are strong, we are fighting for our lives, side by side with our men who were the nation's minds, united by the struggles, united by the past, and it's here we go, for the women of the working class. They talk about statistics, about the price of coal. The cost is the communities that are dying on the dole. Them fighting for a future, we find ways to organize where women's liberation failed and the strike gets mobilized. We are women, we are strong, we are fighting for our lives, side by side with our men who were the nation's minds, united by the struggle, united by the past, and it's here we go, for the women of the working class. Ours is a unity that threats can never breach. Ours an education book that schools could never teach. We face the taunts and violence of Maggie's thugs in blue. When you're fighting for survival, you got nothing left to lose. We are women, we are strong, we are fighting for our lives, side by side with our men who were the nation's minds, united by the struggle, united by the past, and it's here we go, for the women of the working class.
No, because my mum said I can't tell you about stealing coal out at Wagons.
Say what?
No, I was telling you earlier about wagons that were on bottom, and some of it were about adventure. But actually, we had a coal fire. My dad was a miner. We had no coal. So we stole coal out at wagons on tracks. And my mum were like, you mustn't tell them that. So I said, but we did. And my dad and some of his friends, we knew this coal were there, and I'm sure everybody on the street were doing it. I'm sure everybody were doing it. And off they went, over at Bankins, down they installed this coal out of wagons. And my role as a 12-year-old, my mum went berserk, were to sit on rocks in the middle and keep watch. So, and part of me thinks, actually, under ordinary circumstances, would my dad have let me do that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not a chance. But I'm glad I did. And what it built between me and my dad was just amazing. So I'm glad I did, and I'd do it all over again. I probably won't, because I couldn't climb fence now, but there you go. So lots of kind of funny stuff like that. But I think that's it.